May 18th, 2015, regular board meeting of the East China School District. We will start with a moment of silence and Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is items of interest, recognition, and inquiry. Anything from the Board of Education members?
I was over at the middle school today. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you need to?
Right ahead.
I was over at the middle school today. Van Bosch Farms donated flowers. I don't know if Anne Marie's here, but Catherine's here. And I wasn't aware of this until I went to Brenda's retirement party, that there was this wall that they're creating that Riverview got a grant. I'm sure all of you know about it. And it's just really a neat thing. And Anne Marie McLeod's class, the STEM class, went out and planted the orange and black flowers that we donated. And if you haven't seen the wall, it's really, really cool. And the kids were really great. So thanks to you, Catherine, and tell Anne Marie thank you. It's great.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Palms Elementary School, the staff, students, PTO for doing a drive, a toiletries drive for the teens in need so that we can make sure that they have all the essentials they need to get through the summer months. So thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
Mr. Richley.
I have a few things. I wanted to, first of all, talk about the board policy 4112. And I just wanted to bring this up really quick that I wanted to see it on the agenda for the next regular meeting. And for those of you that don't know, this is in regard to board staff communication. And I just wanted to see it changed. Just recently, the Port Huron Area School District Board of Education, in a May 15th Times Herald article, they eliminated some of the wording that's exactly like ours. And for instance, I'll just read this one paragraph. It says all official communications, policies, and directives of the board of staff interest and concern to the staff will be communicated through the superintendent, who shall also keep staff members fully informed of the board's problems, concerns, and actions. That kind of, it's something I see as a problem in a letter from May 14th of 2 years ago. Dr. Skalka talked about addressing this, and so I think it's something that we should address, and I kind of forgot about it, so I mean I take responsibility as well for not following up with that, but that's something that I would like to see happen. And then also, on a positive note, the East China Bark for Life is coming up on June 6th, and the East China Relay for Life is also on June 13th. So I urge the community to get involved, and I see the National Junior Honor Society for Marine City has, or the National Honor Society, excuse me, has taken part in that. So that's great. So that's all I have.
Okay. Dr. Skalka, administration.
Yep, this is a really exciting time of year. We've had a field day at Eddy and academic honors last week. Many more celebrations will be going on as we close the school year, heading toward graduation on May 31st. We want to, since this will be the last meeting before graduation, I wanted to again congratulate all the students who will be either graduating or have received honors and recognition, as well as all of the principals, teachers, support staff, and parents who helped bring those to fruition. As of this morning, East China School District seniors have earned $3.14 million in scholarships to post-secondary programs, colleges, and universities from coast to coast. So we'll continue. I was in St. Clair High today where Mr. Miller asked students to, again, keep bringing those scholarship letters in. Hopefully we'll have a total that's even higher come graduation. And again, I congratulate all of those students who have earned distinction. Also this summer, our district will offer enrichment courses for the first time in several years for our elementary, middle, and high school students. Courses are being offered in the area of science, writing, art, and theater. I encourage students and parents to get more information from the district website and enroll as soon as possible, as enrollment is limited. Thank you.
All right, great. Next item on our agenda is a special recognition. This is the St. Clair County Association of School Boards, scholarship recipients and mentors. I'm going to read the first one from here because Krista was not able to be here tonight. This year's recipient from Marine City High School is Krista Brinley. Krista plans to attend Central Michigan University, where she will study music education. Krista is the daughter of Matthew Brinley and Melissa Chakulski. When Krista joined the band, she had no idea it would change her life. But because of one teacher's passion and dedication, she became inspired to be a music education teacher. Mr. David Ulrich is credited with changing Krista's life. It was through his passion for students and his career that opened Krista's eyes to the field of music education. Unfortunately, a scheduling conflict has kept both Krista and Mr. Ulrich Eberhard career that opened Krista's eyes to the field of music education. Unfortunately, a scheduling conflict has kept both Krista and Mr. Ulrich Eberhard and Eric Rothschild. Please come forward. On behalf of the St. Clair County Association of School Boards, I am pleased to present McKenna Signer with a check for $600. This is the 25th year that the County School Board Association has awarded scholarship checks to students who are planning to pursue a teaching degree. McKenna plans to attend Saginaw Valley State University, where she will study elementary education. She is the daughter of William and Stephanie Signer. Although not easy to pick a career path, McKenna is confident in her choice of teaching. When she was little and played school with the neighborhood kids, her role was always the teacher. Watch what the little ones do. Two teachers provided great examples to McKenna and inspired her to become a teacher, Mark Eberhard and Eric Rothschild. McKenna says that she feels lucky to have had these two teachers and says that both go above and beyond on a daily basis, which is something she is inspired to do. Congratulations to all. Wait.
Put their hands on it.
Congratulations. Next item on our agenda is the Academic Spotlight, Gearing Elementary, Mrs. Linda Crandall. Foster Grandparent Program.
Good evening, Dr. Skalka, Mr. Beaver, members of the board. I'm Linda Crandall, principal of Gearing Elementary School. Tonight, we are delighted to be able to share with you a very valuable partnership that Gearing has with the St. Clair County Council on Aging and the foster grandparent program. Tonight, I'm happy to have with us our school social worker, Linda Bruckner, who will tell you a little bit about the foster grandparent program, how it is benefiting our Gearing students, as tonight we give 3 cheers to our special grandma, who indeed is a very important part of our Gearing staff. So, highlight our foster grandparent program. Linda?
Good evening. What is the foster grandparent program? The foster grandparent program is a nationally based program that was started in 1965. The program enables seniors to interact and support young children, play, learn, and grow together. Students improve through tutoring. The program's goal is to provide grandparent volunteers who tutor and demonstrate care for our children. The foster grandparent program has been serving St. Clair County since 1977. Gearing Elementary partners with the St. Clair County Council on Aging, who assigns a grandparent to our school. Our grandma gives back to our community and makes a positive difference in the lives of our Gearing students. Grandma Hazel Jamison has been an integral part of Gearing Elementary for 7 years. She has provided over 4,000 hours of volunteer service to our school, working with students in kindergarten through 5th grade. Grandma Hazel volunteers 20 hours each week at Gearing Elementary. Gearing is her home away from home. We love our grandma. Grandma always has a smile. Everyone wants to work with Grandma. Grandma encourages our students. She provides some tender, loving care. So why does Grandma never miss a day? Perfect attendance. Let's welcome and hear from Grandma.
Good evening. I'm Hazel Jamison, but for everyone at Gearing Elementary, I'm just Grandma. The foster grandparent program is in its 38th year in St. Clair County. The group of which I am a part serves in Capac, Emmett, Yale, Kimball, Port Huron, and St. Clair. We have about 70 volunteers. The foster grandparents program is funded through the state, federal grants, the local senior millage, as well as donations. Now you're probably wondering just what I do every day. As a foster grandma, here are some of the things I do when I work with the children. I help the children to learn to write their names, to learn the alphabet and their sounds, help the children with rhyming words and practicing sight words. And I also help with them counting numbers. Actually, I help the teachers with whatever they need. And I even get my own bottle of water in gym class. The kids say to me, "When will I see you? Grandma, take me today. Why don't you call on me?" I love being a foster grandma to my kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Grandma, for making a positive difference. It's a win-win for everyone, our senior citizens, our children, and our community.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda, consisting of the approval of minutes for the regular Board of Education meeting, April 27th, 2015, special Board of Education meeting, May 7th, 2015, approval of payment of bills, financial statement, schedule of investments. The Board of Education authorizes the superintendent to enter the one-year administration management contract to Good Marks for schools employment services effective July 1st, 2015, for the employment of Joyce Lemmer as Pine River Elementary principal. The Board of Education authorizes the superintendent to establish employment conditions and contracts for members of the administrative and supervisory staff for the 2015-17 fiscal years. Included in this group are the following individuals: Catherine Woolman, Executive Director of Curriculum; Dawn Demick, Executive Director of Personnel; Tina Wiglars, Executive Director of Finance; Craig Headley, Director of Technology; Kirk Gwisleka, Director of Operations; Rachel Freakin, Special Education Supervisor; David Simpson, Performing Arts Center Manager. Motion is needed.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Kennegbauer,
Support.
support by Mr. Richley.
I just have one question that I'm asking for the benefit of the community, I guess, because I already asked it before the meeting. But am I correct in saying that, for instance, when we're going for other contracts, there's going to be reductions most likely, and approving this doesn't mean that there's not going to be?
Well, I can't speak to any future contracts at this point, but I will say that Section 3 of all non-affiliated administrators' contracts includes the language that says said salary shall be reviewed annually. And so that is what indeed takes place. So though you are approving the ability for me to create contracts so that administrators have some security to be in the first year of a 2-year agreement, all salaries and benefits are reviewed annually.
Thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. So moved. Next item on the agenda is recognition of persons wishing to address the board. Kelly, no cards? Okay. Seeing none. Our reports, superintendent report, Dr. Skalka.
Yes, facility focus groups. Last month, we had a team including a facility planner, instructional technology expert, architect, mechanical, electrical, civil, and project engineers toured every single one of our facilities as part of the facility study that's being undertaken. Principals led them through their buildings with the ideas that they would be gathering information, many pictures taken about the current conditions and needs and wants. Tomorrow, many of these same individuals will be back in the district to conduct 3 different focus groups. First being with the administrators in the morning, followed by the restructuring committee at 4:15 tomorrow afternoon, and a community meeting at 7 p.m. tomorrow night for all invited community. We've placed that invitation on the website, and I spoke with the Times Herald today. We've also invited every staff member in the district via email. The purpose of these meetings is to collect information and collect data just like the walkthroughs collected information and data. Specifically, we're asking those that work and use the facilities daily, as well as our community members, what they believe to be the greatest needs and wants in the district when it comes to facilities. We are asking for that information so as to combine it with things like the usable life of mechanical equipment and other hard data. This would be perceptual data and things that that the community holds and values as important in the education of their sons and daughters. So again, I would encourage anyone who is available to join us for that 7 p.m. meeting tomorrow in the community. We will hold it right here, and we look forward to great participation and a lot of feedback. With respect to, I say any questions, or I'll just keep going to summer feeding.
Go right ahead.
Summer feeding. For this, we will once again participate in the Michigan Department of Education summer feeding program. It'll be our 2nd year. We are excited on 2 levels. One, we're excited that we're doing it again. Again, it will be based out of Marine City High School Middle School, out of the cafeteria there. We will begin on Monday, June 22nd, and it will run through Friday, August 28th. And this is for any school-aged student. not even, you could be visiting from out of town and be school age, and you could come and get lunch. We recognize, along with the state of Michigan, that summer is a difficult time for families. Maybe parents are working. Maybe it's difficult for, without a school-provided lunch. So here's an opportunity. We do it at Marine City Middle and High because that is where we base our elementary summer school program, as well as our secondary summer school program and many camps and other activities, including many of our summer enrichment programs that we're starting this summer. So we would again encourage everyone to come out and have lunch. The only requirement is you do have to eat it there. You can't grab it and take it with you. You are required to eat at the site. We're also excited because we've expanded to a second site this year. We just received approval, I would say last Friday and or this morning from MDE, and a second site will be at East China Township Park. And we will partner with the East China Summer Recreation Program. Now this one though is a little bit more restricted because the recreation program does not meet 5 days a week. We are not allowed by MDE to make it an open program. It is a closed program to just those students who participate in the East China Summer Recreation Program. But at least it again is providing our community and our kids in our community more meals and more nutritious meals on a regular basis. So we're excited about both of those things, and I thank Julie Humphrey for doing all the work with MDE to get us all approved once again this school year.
Comments, questions? Great program.
Mhm.
It was nice to see it expanded.
How many lunches, this was last year too, you said?
Yes.
So how many lunches do they typically serve?
We started pretty darn slow, and then word got out, and I think they were up near 80 to 100 a day, because especially once elementary summer school starts, kids will stick around. We conveniently bring the summer school buses in about 15, 20 minutes after summer school so that kids are there to eat, because again, we want to make sure that they have a nutritious meal. So.
Awesome. Okay. Information items. Oh, district financial reports, pardon me. Tina Wegler's 2014-15 budget revision.
Yes, we're going to combine both of these items together, and I'll ask Tina to provide the board with some information regarding both the 14-15 final budget revision and the 15-16 proposed budget. As she's coming up to the podium, I wanted to present to you some information, or at least present to the community information that I presented to you in an update this past Friday. We built an initial 15-16 budget on the most conservative estimates of what we believed was going to be an increase in the foundation allowance. I spent time in Lansing last week with representatives, and with the defeat of Proposal 1, everyone was counseled to not presume or not pass a budget that included any increase at all. Now, it might come to pass, but everybody said your best bet was to presume a flat budget. So what you had in your original board packet presumed what we had known at that time, which was approximately a $52 per student increase once all the positives and negatives were put into place. That was the most conservative. That was the governor's proposal. I provided you on Friday a revised budget that says flat budgeting. Now, obviously, between tonight, and this is a good and one of the reasons we wanted to give you information tonight was rather than have you have to think about this and deal with this at the end of June when you're required to pass a budget at that June meeting. We have some time to give some consideration to some things. Specifically, the legislature, it does not appear that they're going to meet the June 1st target that they have met in recent years in terms of passing a budget. They have added days to their calendar, and they have stated that they will continue to work at it until they do pass a budget, but we don't know exactly when that'll be. If we remember back to the pre-Governor Snyder times, there were times because the state's fiscal year begins on October 1st, we actually wouldn't have a state budget until August or September going into a school year, kind of hard to budget for that. Four things, Tina's going to share the information, and one of the things that she shares is that as a result of flat budgeting, she will share that we have a prospective fund balance in June of 16 of less than 7%, and you have a board policy that says we cannot go below 7%. I would argue that when we eventually get the information from the state, we will be above 7% as the original budget was provided to you a week ago. But there are some things to consider there, and that is whether or not we wait the month and see what the legislature does, or I gave you, that was one option. Three other options would be to revise that board policy downward again below 7%. A third option would be to consider some revenue enhancements and cuts so that even with a flat budget, we would be above 7%, and I provided you a sample of how that might be done. Or I think it's another assumption we're making is that we would be down 67 students. And all indications right now are positive. We've had, obviously, I've given you good kindergarten roundup results, positive kindergarten roundup results, and since kindergarten roundup, the number of students that have enrolled and have already started school or have indicated that they will start in September is as many as, I believe I stated 57. So, that we don't know how many students are planning on leaving the district. We haven't gotten a read on that. But in essence, we have budgeted for 67 fewer students. If that turns out to be 56, we need 11 students, an 11 student swing to be above that 7% fund balance. So there's another way that we can take a look at the budget. But it's important that we give you at least some information tonight. We will have our annual required budget hearing prior to your June meeting, and then at the June meeting, we will ask that you approve the revised final revision and the 15-16 budget. So I don't think I stole a lot of Ms. Weglar's thunder, but wanted to provide you information as to why what you received on Tuesday was different than what you received on Friday. Go ahead.
Good evening, President Bewer, trustees. I see the crowd has thinned out. They didn't want to stick around for the exciting financials. I can't say I blame them. As Dr. Skalka indicated, I will be presenting a combination, the final budget for fiscal year 15 and the proposed budget for fiscal year 16. I would like to, along with that will be the cafeteria and the latchkey budgets. I would like to draw your attention to the top of the screen. Am I using this correctly? Get my laser.
Excuse me.
I guess I'm not very good at, what am I doing? Which one's the one? Okay, at the top of the screen, it's in blue. You're going to see some abbreviations throughout my presentation. OB, which stands for original budget. R1 is going to reflect the revision 1, the revision that normally occurs in December, the January timeframe of each year. And R2, the final version. To begin with, I'd like to show comparisons from our first revised budget for fiscal year 15 and our final version of their fiscal year 15 budget. Our first revision showed a use of fund balance of $901,000 with a remaining budget of $3.6 million or an 8.87% of budgeted expenditures. With this final budget, there is a slight decrease in revenues and a slight decrease in expenditures, or a slight decrease use of fund balance down to $812,000. This slightly increases our fund balance to $3.7 million, or a 9.15% of fund balance to budgeted expenditures.
If I could for just a moment, I want to back up just a little bit and say the original budget that was passed last June called for the use of $1.1 million of fund balance and would have resulted in an 8.36% fund balance. And so I do want to speak to the fact that principals and everyone have been pinching every penny. We've been doing everything we possibly can, and we've cut that down from 1.1 to 811. So we always continue to work at trying to reduce that deficit.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Absolutely.
So in December, we do the first revision.
Correct.
So have the schools been asked then to, like maybe in January, do you go to the schools and say to them that their budget has now been cut a certain percentage, or have they been able to maintain what they were given at the beginning of the school year? Have they still been able to maintain that, or have they gotten word that our budget now is cut X amount of dollars?
Trustee Bebach, actually interesting this year, we had a work group that developed a formula that the building budgets, they would know what to expect on an annual basis. And once it's given to them at the beginning of the year, it would only be revised in the first revision if it exceeds 0.05%.
Okay.
So it is relatively stable.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any surprises come January or the beginning of the new semester that, hey, guys, guess what? All your budgets are now cut 10% for the rest of the year, and that's really difficult to do, so I was just wondering.
No,
all right.
Actually, it's a very good question, and it's all based around the foundation allowance that is given
Right.
In relation to the pupil enrollment.
Right. Okay, thank you.
A few notable impacts that I would like you to focus on for the final version of fiscal year 15. With the revision 1 at $901,000 usage of fund balance, there is a decrease in revenues in the MIPSTERS 147D of $260,000. At the beginning of the year, the state was giving us approximately $316,000 in MIPSTERS pass-through. Mid-year, they eliminated that funding along with the expenditures. So you'll see a reduction within the revenues and in the expenditures. What's different in the difficult in the expenditures is you'll see a little bit at every single function level within the budget category, whereas the revenue shows up in one line item, so it's a little bit easier to pull out than it is at the benefit level. In addition to that, we had some positive decreases in our consumption of natural gas and electrical use, along with our rates, at about $89,000. So the net change of this is a decrease of fund balance of $89,000. Now, there were multiple different changes or moving around of personnel within the budget, so you will see some fluctuations, but these are the major changes from that first revision and the final revision of fiscal year 15. And that was my total summary on the fiscal year 15. I was planning to move to the original budget unless you have any questions. Good? Okay, in this next slide, I'm adding one more layer to the budget. I still have, for comparison purposes, the first vision of 14-15. I have the final version of the 14-15, but then I've added in the original budget, so you can see the comparison in the revenues, expenditures, and the use and fund balance. Just to back up a little bit, the original budget for 15-16, revenues are going to come in at $39.3 million. Expenditures at $40.3 million with a use of fund balance of $964,000, leaving us with a fund balance of $2.7 million and a fund balance that is below our adopted board policy at 6.8%. Our financial assumptions, as Dr. Skalka had stated, I had revised the budget and I'm basing it off of flat. I'm basing it flat. So basically what I did is I had moved it back to our 14-15 levels on all of our foundation allowance and our categoricals. However, I am projecting a decrease of pupil enrollment of 67, and that's based off of the Stanford consulting services we had conducted for us. The foundation allowance and categoricals, foundation allowance remaining at $7,595 per pupil. Best practices remaining at 50. District performance remaining at 40, and at risk at 142 per pupil. I am anticipating a varied change within all these different categoricals. I'm thinking that our state funding is going to look quite a bit different by the time the state budget is adopted.
Tina, I just have another question.
Sure.
On that fund allowance of $7,595, is that what we currently get?
That's on the 1415.
Yes.
All right, so let's say that we did get an additional $50 per student.
Mm-hmm.
And what's our number of students right now? About 4,500?
43,
43?
30.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so that possibly would give us some additional revenue. I know that you can't, I know you want to be on the side of caution, but I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe if we did get that $50, that would take that, you said we're going to use about $960,000 of fund equity for
964,
next year?
correct.
Okay, all right.
The important-
Leading up to last week, when they said you better plan for flat funding, at least for your June budget, all three proposals, the state, the House, the Senate, and the governor, they pretty much were eliminating the categoricals. They were eliminating best practice, eliminating district performance, but adding that in to the foundation allowance. And that's where some of that was changing. And so Tina's right. We're gonna lose some of the monies in one area. We're gonna gain it potentially in others. And in essence, that's not the worst thing in the world to eliminate best practices, because that's basically saying, okay, districts, you get the money without all the hoops that you have to jump through for best practices. So,
Okay, all right.
but yeah.
Moving on to the MIPSTers 147 and 147D. 147C, the funding will increase from 7.63% to 10.53%. 147D, I need to bring it to your attention again. It was eliminated mid-year, 14-15. To remind you, these are pass-through. Though we record them as revenues, we have to record the equal expenditures. So sometimes it makes our expenditures appear to be inflated. Our MIPSTers employer rates remains unchanged at 25.78% of applicable payroll. Our MESA healthcare increase, 6.99 was the state average. East China's came in at 6%, with an additional 100% of state Affordable Care Act fees. Our instructional staffing, a decrease of 3 FTEs for next year. Okay, to begin with the revenue, I'd like to portray this in the revenue sources. The local, a slight decrease of $26,000. A state decrease of $254,000. I'd like to draw your attention to that is not only foundation allowance, that is the categoricals, and then it's also the MIPSTers pass-through. So you have one coming up and you have one decreasing. So that's the net of all those changes. A federal is a slight decrease of 56. That will be modified in our first revision. As soon as we know exactly what our Title I carryover is, I will be portraying an amendment in the first revision. So the net decrease in revenues are $331,000, or about just under a % decrease from last year. Moving on to the expenditures. I'd like to show expenditures in a few different angles. It's hard to see how expenditures are actually being impacted when you just look at them from one angle. So this first angle, we're going to look at them at the broad categorical view. Instruction is taking a slight decrease of $14,000. Added needs is a decrease of $66,000. In supporting services, a decrease of $98,000 for a total of $179,000 in expenditures. So when we look at the next slide, and when I said that I'd like to portray them in a few different angles, I like to break these down and say, okay, out of those decreases, what exactly are they? So I have 6 different categories here: salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, capital outlay, and other chargebacks. Salaries, a decrease of $327,000. We, with the 3 FTEs, instructional staffing, we've had numerous changes within our staffing throughout the year. We've had a few retirements, voluntary terminations. We've had some other changes in retirement in transportation and custodial, and because those expenses get moved to an outside contractor, they will show a decrease in our wages. We've also had changes in our IT department. We've had in our curriculum. We've had parapro in media, staffing changes. There will also be some impact in the Title I carryover next year. Benefits, you'll see an increase of in aggregate, $164,000 in benefits. And we're going to look at them a little bit closer in the next slide. Purchase services are pretty well flat. I do want to look at our purchase services as we complete a full year in our grounds and snow removal, along with our custodial. Supplies and materials are pretty well flat. Our capital outlay, a slight decrease of $7,400, and other chargebacks are equally as flat. Those last 2 columns, just for your information, if you wanted to know what salaries made up of the full budget, you'll see it's about 55%. Benefits make up about 32% of the budget. Purchase services, just under 8%. Supplies and materials are only about 6%. Do want to bring your attention to capital outlay pretty much is non-existent out of our operational revenue.
And one of the reasons we're able to do that is because of the purchase service agreements. We're no longer investing in the equipment that we'd have to invest in, whether that be trucks, plows, mowers, a lot of those kind of things. Those are now the responsibility of the contracted service.
To focus in on I'm sorry, go ahead.
Do you want us to wait until the end, or?
No, interrupt me as we're looking at the screen. This is fine.
Under purchased services, if you add, like between salaries and benefits, just so that people know, that's also part of it. But the thing that, I guess what I take away from it is that we do pay for those things, the vehicles and all that kind of stuff through that.
That is correct.
Pay, but it's just a different way of paying.
That is correct.
In essence, and again, I don't have the exact dollars in front of me, in essence, that's not the case, because the savings, if we were to total up the total amounts of salary and equipment in-house, if we were to do that, we're basically, it's salary for salary. It's not salary and equipment.
Right.
The equipment piece that is where our truly our savings is in contracting those services. So.
We save from not paying the retirement and health insurance and all that stuff. We just pay a flat rate.
In addition.
But the thing that, I'm not sure what it's called, but in the contract, I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head, but it's like there's the actual, you pay for the employee, and then there's an extra added thing.
Administrative fee?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. And that's that's where they make their profit. But the thing that, to go back to the snow removal thing, is that something, did we actually save money on that or not? And if we did, what was the?
Where we saved on the purchase of the equipment and the repair of the equipment.
Okay. We didn't, if you remember, my first year, we authorized the purchase of 2 trucks that we never ended up buying because we didn't have to.
Right.
Because we didn't have the trucks and the plows and the capacity with the older equipment in order to continue to plow without purchasing new equipment.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Tina, and I think by law, you can't, I could be wrong, you can't lump purchase services in with salaries, can you?
No, for our reporting requirements, they all have to be
Right,
reported under the FID in a particular format. Yes, and you cannot combine them.
Right.
You have to report them separately.
Okay.
To zero in on just a particular expenditure is benefits. Because in the previous slide, I showed you where just about every expenditure was flat or there's been a decrease except for benefits. Benefits can be really confusing because if you think salaries are going down, you would think that every associated benefit would go down with it. And that is the case sometimes. But however, when you look at health, dental, and vision, even though we will have less employees, we did incur a 6% increase plus some Affordable Care Act fees. So that I'm projecting approximately $143,000 increase for next year. Our retirement and FICA, I'm projecting a decrease of just under $200,000. But here again, your MIPSTers 147C and D, there will be an increase of $222,000. However, please don't forget the revenue that was brought in on the flip side. But when we're reporting those expenditures, it can skew the bottom line. Workman's comp and unemployment is pretty well flat. That concludes my presentation for the general fund. Was there any other questions regarding the general fund?
So at this point, in one of your early slides, revenues were down just under 1%.
Yes.
Expenditures were down less than 0.5%. So to cut to the chase, we're moving in the wrong direction. Is that fair to say?
Compared to the final for fiscal year 15, it appears that way. However, if there was any kind of bump ups in the state budget, yes, or if we incur an increase in our pupil enrollment, that would be extremely positive. But yes.
It's been laid out very nicely and take the assumptions and use them. We talk about dropping down below 7% to 6.8, which up until last year, it was board policy, it was 10%, and we dropped it down to 7%. But I think even more importantly to look at than those percentages is that if we're going into our fund balance for just short of $1 million to balance this budget, take $1 million from, I think you gave us that number, coming down to 16.
Yeah, if we continued on this trend, we would be looking at just over 3 years of fund balance before we're in the deficit.
Thank you.
Mr. Rishley.
To just make one more point about the purchase services, it was an increase of about 0.01%, am I correct? Approximately.
Decrease.
Oh, it was a decrease. Okay, well.
Slight decrease.
The thing that I wanted to see if we could get some information on, and I assume that's probably has to do with retirements of people.
For the purchase services?
Right.
Yes.
And the thing that I am concerned with, I guess, is that we've had them for, well, at least 3 years. I mean, they're more like 5 years probably if you include the custodians into that, as in like the privatized support services. I would like a breakdown of the actual savings, because we always hear, there's going to be this much savings, but we never actually look at how much it actually saved. So I would like to see the numbers of what was actually saved comparable to what wouldn't have been saved if we wouldn't have gone with that, if possible.
Which particular activity though, Alan?
For the support services, which would be the custodians, bus drivers, and the secretarial, or I guess parapros too would be. lumped in that as well. I mean, just to see if there's actually been a savings, because I've heard people saying that there hasn't been as much savings as we anticipated, and then I've heard the opposite, so.
Yep. Well, we can work through that, Trustee Virtually. The important thing to remember is when you're looking at a budget and you're focusing on purchase services, you have to look at the entire budget, because sometimes one expenditure, like in a salary, will go down, but it will go up in another area. And then we can't lose sight of the capital. A part of the decision why that decision was made was because we didn't have the funds to support our capital needs, or our capital, just to maintain our capital. So those are items that weren't even put in the budget because we transferred those services to a purchase service company.
Let's also remember that purchase services include any vendor with whom we work.
That is correct.
So it's
That's
not
across the
just
board.
any service that is contracted and that maybe previously was under the direction of the district. It could be any service that we have historically purchased forever and a day.
Correct.
So we certainly can look at that.
Okay.
That's something that you and I can work on together also. If you would like to, I can contact you.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Is there any other questions on the general fund?
Okay.
Oh, so I'm going to move back up. Cafeteria budget. I have 3 levels of the budget. This is a relatively stable budget. I have the audited for fiscal year 14. I have the revised for fiscal year 15. And then also on here in the last column, I have the original budget for fiscal year 16. We have experienced a slight decrease in our sales when we brought in, when the new food guidelines were adopted. That is slowly returning. We are expecting revenues for the end of fiscal year 15 to be $1.36 million, and our expenditures slightly less at $1.34 million. A slight increase to our fund balance of under $20,000. I do want to remind you there was a 20% increase in meal prices this last year, and you had adopted for next year there will be a 10-cent increase for meal prices next year also. Slight increase in the revenues projected for next year. That is directly tied to the increase in the meal prices. The increase in revenues at under $6,000. And a slight increase in expenditures at under $2,000. So we're anticipating we're going to add to the fund balance at $22,000. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind you, though, that even though in this budget we do not have any large capital items placed in here, we do have a vehicle that is just about on its last leg. So that is something that we'll be presenting to you in the future year or two, requesting for a replacement of a vehicle. They do have in their fund balance approximately $250,000.
What kind of a vehicle, Tina?
Van.
And what does, they just go around the district, or I didn't know we had one?
It goes to the different locations and it transports items, whatever they need to conduct their
Okay.
food service business.
I did not know that.
If I remember correctly, it's about 9 years old, and we've been maintaining, trying to keep it running.
Okay.
Moving on to the latchkey budget. Same setup here. I have the audited fiscal year 14. I have the final version of 15, and then I have the proposed budget for 16. You can see revenues are fairly well flat at about $500,000. We have not changed rates, and we seem to be retaining the same level of participants in these services. The expenditures are also pretty well matched with the revenues. They are right around $500,000. We ended last year with just making $770. We are anticipating a slight use of fund balance of about $3,000 for this year, and I'm anticipating it's going to be the same for next year unless there's a major change, but we don't have any plans of a change. And that concludes my budget presentation. Is there any questions?
Just a question in regards to our lunch program, the free and reduced lunch program.
Sure.
We're still staying within state guidelines and
Yes.
pricing with that program?
Yes.
Mr. Richley?
I assume the federal revenue, is that with regard to the free and reduced lunch? Am I correct in saying that?
That
Like
is
most of
correct.
it? Okay. And for the vehicle, I have to make this point, but we obviously, this is one of our purchased services, and with Chartwell's, and we're still purchasing a vehicle, so I mean,
It is a part of our contract where we provide all the equipment, and they basically, they come in and they provide the food service. They
Right.
administer it for us. So
Right.
the equipment is our needs. That was a part of our contract with them.
right, but I'm just making that point, but then the other thing as well is, under the expenditures, the salaries and fringes, would that, am I correct in saying that would be the lunch aides and then the director, or would?
That is the new needs only. The director is going to fall under the purchase service line item. All of Chartwell's employees and all of their associated expenditures fall under that line item.
Okay, and so that's also, I know that's in the contract that we provide the lunch aides, but then for, I guess for, for equipment, would that include, like the ovens and all that stuff? We provide all of that?
That's correct. That's all of our equipment. That's East China's.
Okay, thank you.
Did I see that correctly, that latchkey actually costs us a little bit of money? It's fairly even, but it
3,000.
Slightly.
it
Trustee
doesn't quite
Disrath.
cover its cost.
That's what it appears to be this year. It's getting quite tight. We might need to look at that a little closer and make some adjustments.
How long has it been since we had an increase in cost-wise for latchkey?
I'm going to say it had
2
to
or
be
3 years
prior
ago?
to my employment because I don't recall. 3.
Okay.
I think that's a good point, but the other thing too, to remember, I can't remember what it was for the cafeteria fund, but the fund balance is pretty good for now. At least, I mean, we'll have some money left over. So, I mean, from what I'm looking at.
It's maintaining its own services. I wouldn't say that it's in my opinion, it doesn't appear to be in any trouble at this point. It's going to capture our attention if the revenues start to decrease and the expenditures start to increase.
Correct.
You do have an increase in healthcare and retirement rates, even though we haven't increased our rates to be a part of the program, so.
How many students does latchkey affect? Anybody know?
Oh, I would have to look that up.
No, don't look it up. You've got enough to do. I'm sorry. Okay, I was just wondering overall, I don't want to break down. You guys are too busy to, okay. Okay.
Do we have to turn anyone away? So everybody that needs to use latchkey can use latchkey.
Good. Thank you, Tina. Nice job.
All right, next item on the agenda is our information discussion items, Board Policy 5517.01, bullying and other aggressive behavior towards students.
Yes, during the past December's lame duck session, the legislature made minor changes to the requirements in the district's bullying policies, excuse me. These changes have to be adopted and revised policies sent to the Michigan Department of Education by May 30th. So included in your board packet are the required changes, which include notifying MDE of the changes within 30 days, greater identity protection for individuals submitting a complaint, And I apologize for letting this one slip by me that we have to vote tonight, but I do need to, again, present the fact that we adopted per law by May 30th. So really the changes are fairly insignificant.
These changes coming from Neola as their recommendations?
Correct.
Okay. Comments, questions? Okay. Item number 2, school student handbooks, middle school strike-throughs.
Yeah, so the administrative team, I think we referenced it a little bit earlier, took on several different projects this past summer. And one of those projects was to do a complete and comprehensive review of the secondary student handbook in a very similar manner to what the board undertook last year to review all of its Neola and board policies. Specifically, we had not looked at the secondary handbook in a comprehensive manner in several years to ensure that it was up to date with all current legislation coming out of both Lansing and Washington. So just like we use Neola for your board policies, we worked with the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals, and they have a model student handbook. And member districts, of which we are able to use that as a template for making sure that their local student handbooks are both legally correct and up to date. Handbook was revised to reflect those recent changes in law, and we provided a copy for you this month so that you may act next month. Please understand that the copy that we provided to you is certainly in no way final formatted form. We wouldn't let it go out in that fashion to parents and public and everything else. It's just the content of it we wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to look at well in advance. I want to recognize Chris Ming's leadership in this effort, as well as the work of the secondary principals, Jeff Cook, Catherine Woolman, Mike Alley, Suzanne Cybula, Ron Miller, and Nina Resnich, who all did a good deal of work to get this to us this school year.
So they've all been through the entire handbook?
Yes, they have. Yeah.
Any concerns addressed?
Yep, they've met probably about once a month in the mornings prior to an all-district ad team meeting. They came in about an extra hour early to keep working on it. And we also recognize that some of the language probably wasn't middle school appropriate, or the consequences should have been a little less for middle school, and that's why there's some differences there.
Steve, I have several questions regarding the secondary handbook.
Great.
Under the high school graduation requirements, on that page, it doesn't mention anything about the foreign language requirement, and I didn't know if that fell under visual performing and applied arts. I don't think it does.
No. It was just revised. Ms. Woolman, you want to speak to secondary foreign language?
I believe that the revision did make it into the handbook, so we can check that.
Yeah. It's down to 1 credit rather than 2.
Okay, and then I know that when it talks about commencement participation, all the credit, below that, it says credit requirements of the Michigan Merit Standard, and then it says on number 7, it says at least 2 credits in a language. So I wanted to make sure that that said 1.
So, well, the state of Michigan still requires 2. In China, they've did 1, provided that they take additional visual performing arts or technical.
I think when you look, and I too looked in that section, and frankly didn't make it through the whole thing. I think it was a very good, a very important document. It's a student handbook. It's the expectations to the student what they need to do. And I think when you look as you continue to review it and get it into its final format, when you look to where we state things in different formats, where we've pulled it all together from different sources, when you compare, for instance, the table that we're talking about that breaks down so many credits in foreign lit, then when you go into the verbiage that follows that, it doesn't always match.
Yep.
And then as well as, and I've given my markups for what they're worth to Dr. Skolka.
Yep.
When we get into alternative forms of credit, whether it be night school, dual enrollment. When we look at the requirements of what has to happen for a student to gain credit in that manner, we're not real consistent in the way that we spell that out. And so I think it's just a lot of little things.
Well, I greatly appreciate the extra set of eyes that you folks are, and that's the reason of giving it to you a month in advance, because what we want to do is, in the June board packet, give you the final formatted copy, the way it would go home and those kind of things, so that what you're voting on is what goes home. And so we cross-reference and take a look at everything.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question. Then item number 9, board action agenda items. B will be tabling.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yep,
Next month then?
Good.
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, because we
Then-
need
I
some
think
more
we just got
time.
excited. Yes, thank you for pointing that out, absolutely. That was always our intention.
Thank Kelly.
Yeah.
As we're throwing stuff at you real quickly, one, there's a section as it exists on dress code with an asterisk. This list should be supplemented with the school's actual dress code. And one thing I'd like, just in general, document what you do and do what you document. So if there's as black and white as we can be, I think the better, the easier for everyone to police. And it's easy to sit here and make that kind of recommendation when it comes to administering a dress code to high school students. I had a hard enough time this morning with my daughter.
Very good. Okay, again, thank you. I appreciate the extra set of eyes. It's 7 extra sets of eyes.
Well, I will
Anything you
give-
want to drop off would be helpful.
Yeah, because I had a lot of questions. Just for instance, real quick, because I don't want to take up anybody's time, but it talked about possession or under the influence of a non-alcoholic malt beverage, and it said, first offense, a suspension and police involvement. Second offense, 10-day suspension, police involvement. And then the third offense was indefinite suspension, and recommendation for expulsion, but it didn't say anything about police involvement. And there was a few others like that also, that the first and second offense, we had it written down that there would be police involvement. And just from past experience, sometimes that handbook becomes...
The Bible.
It's the Bible.
It is.
And the parents or the students and the secondary principals know this. They're going to go through that when they're, not until they're in trouble, because they sign for the handbook that, yes, we've read it, we have it. Well, we know that they haven't read it until something happens. So I've just learned over the years that everything has to be, and it's hard to do that. And you learn through experience, and if an event happens, then we revise the handbook to address that, and then we, the following year. So I'm not going to take up anybody's time, I'll just give you those.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Next item on the agenda is the RESA budget.
Each year in May, local school districts are required by law to take an advisory vote to either endorse or not endorse its intermediate school districts or RESA budget. There's an action item later on the agenda for this purpose.
Comments, questions?
If I recall correctly, last year, the board voted to not approve the RESA budget. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I also wanted to ask the rest of the board if they were in receipt of the email that we received from Amanda Zaber, the president of the, I think it was Yale School Board. Everybody, okay. I personally feel as though I'm in agreeance with her and kind of following through with the stand that the board took last year. And then again this year, they're going after, they're reversing the pay cuts, so that bothers me.
I support what Jeannie says.
I thought a lot about that issue. I see both sides of it. On the one hand, I see you know, we're in a financial crisis as a school, and you know, they're also a school system in Michigan, and so it's hard to give a raise at that time. The other side of it, I guess I see, is they know what their budget is, and they have a board there to make a decision about, you know, just get presentations just like we got today, and make their own decisions. And so I don't know if I guess I'd have to look and see. One thing that I would look at is there anything, are there any student services that were cut in order to give a raise to a board member? That would be my concern. I don't think that that's the case. I don't know how many or how many people got a raise and how big the raise was. Does anyone know that?
I was going to save this for the actual motion, but I'll present this now. Give me just 1 second, sorry. According to the Times Herald, and also looking at the actual, like I went through the budget. I had like an 8-hour bus ride about 2 weeks ago, and so I went through this entire thing. It was pretty good reading. But going through this, it says the actual increase was 2% for the director salaries, which there was 5 of them, and then it was a 5%. It was a little over a 5% increase for the superintendent, that's Mr. DeGrow, and totaling $20,000. And going
I believe that's $20,000 in total to the budget, not just to Superintendent DeGrow. That's
right,
That's all the all the increase, yeah.
Right.
And that was the same amount that they had taken
Cut.
out of their salary?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Which the reason why because I remember last year, the whole thing that I said was, well, I appreciate that they took pay cuts, but, you know, it's too little too late. And then now, after cutting, it says here, the Technical Education Center budget reflects $400,000 in budget cuts that had to be made in order to balance the budget. RISA said those cuts were in response to reduced property tax revenues during the recent recession. The 2015-16 tech budget is $4.7 million, down from $5.1 million last year. And so I actually have a couple of ideas, and I submitted this to each RISA board member, and I got one response from Mr. Campbell. He's a good guy, but looking at, okay, I'm going to go through each one of them. First of all, I propose that we either eliminate 3 of the director positions or share the costs and responsibilities with each of the St. Clair County districts, saving, that would be $500,000 right there. And that also would save each of the districts money. There's a director of legal services, there's a director of vocational education, a director of finance and business, a director of education services, a director of special education, and then you got the superintendent. The superintendent makes, this is the current salary, this is without the increase in it, $157,000, and each director makes $116,000, which with the increase will be a little over $118,000, and with Mr. DeGrow's increase, that would be a little over $160,000. Now, going through the benefits that the superintendent receives, which I'll spare you all the other ones that I went through as well, but he will be, or actually I'm looking at this, he'll get $162,400. Additional pay is being increased by $2,237. The salary for the clerical position, that's actually going down, but it's a substitute person, so I mean, if I'm not sure what that's about, but that's $2,000 right there. Group life insurance, disability insurance, dental insurance, vision insurance, board paid annuity of, let's see, that's $2,500. State retirement, which this includes both his and the secretaries. It's a slight increase because of obviously getting the extra salary, and that's $57,000. Personal health care elect, $3,500. Then you've got the employer paid service credit of $10,000, cash in lieu of benefits, $10,000, and then that also that transfers over to the directors as well. Just one second. And then, let's see, daily travel and expense, that's $11,140. Other daily travel and expense, $1,500. Workshops and conferences, $5,000. And cell phone reimbursement of $600. That's just for the superintendent, and then part of that was also lumped in with his secretary. But the problem that I have, like with the cash in lieu of benefits, when you I guess it might be unfair to consider this like with just one person, but I consider it because he also served as a state legislator. I can't remember for how many years, at least 10. So he gets the benefits through the state with that, and then plus the cash in lieu of benefits. I kind of think that's something their board should consider, I think, before. I would rather $10,000 go towards the tech program than towards somebody that already gets those benefits through.
Alan, how many of those directors, though, are paid with like federal funds or state funds rather than coming out of local tax dollars?
There's one out of the 5. That's the special ed director.
The career and technical prep one isn't?
No.
Again, it is this board's responsibility to either endorse or not endorse the budget.
Right.
Not to determine the staffing or compensation of the employees of another board.
Right, and that's not what I'm saying. But if you look at the, what I did is I added this up, and so if they eliminated administrative pay cuts, if they reversed the reverse decision, that would be a savings of $20,000 if they kept the pay cuts. Consolidation of 2 administrative positions, that's a savings of $350,000. Elimination of Mr. DeGrow's cash in lieu, which
That's all. I mean, that's like, shouldn't you go to their board meeting and present
right.
that? I mean, that's like totally beyond
I agree.
what we're doing.
Right.
Well, and kind of
Beyond
in
the scope of our board.
in an effort to
Schweigler's isn't going to
right.
do their budget.
Well, that's not
So-
what I'm saying.
But yeah, you are saying
What's
that.
the point?
No, but if we're supposed to, by law, and I will read that in a moment, we're supposed to, it says, in accordance with section 380.624 of the revised school code, this board must now adopt a resolution expressing its support or disapproval of the proposed RESA budget and must submit to the RESA board any specific objections and proposed changes.
Correct. And Mr. Beaver will read that and when it comes time to vote.
Well,
Because that's part of the,
Mr. Beaver, last time I checked, I had the floor. I thought.
But we're talking about a decision that each board member has got to make on their own, whether we support the RESA budget or we don't support it. I'm not going to rewrite their budget, and I don't think anybody else here is. I mean, if that's
Right.
something that you want to entertain doing, you need to take it to them. We're going to vote on whether we approve or disapprove their budget.
Right.
Excuse me, Mr. Beaver, and it's my understanding that regardless of how we vote, it's really not going to affect what RESA does with their own budget. The idea, the stand that I'm taking on this is more of a lead by example, whereas with the rest of the district struggling to pay for anything, to balance any sort of a budget, and the fact that RESA has cut many programs, including one tech program for teachers. I'm not sure exactly what it was called, but there's been quite a few programs that they've cut. Again, lead by example. I just find it hard to digest that anybody would take a pay increase at this time.
I agree.
RESA board elections.
Yes, whenever an opening exists on the RISA Board of Education, its constituent districts must nominate an individual to serve as an elector for the purpose of filling the open seat. This year, there's only one open seat, and Ms. Janet Clayton, whose seat it is that's open, is the sole candidate for the position. There's an action item, again, later in the agenda for the purpose of designating a member of this board to serve as its representative on the 2015 electoral body for the open RISA Board of Education seat. The representative must be available to attend the meeting of the electoral body on Monday, June 1st at 5:30 at the RISA Administration Building Boardroom.
Okay. In that discussion, anyone interested in being a representative for the board?
You need an alternate too, so yikes.
Didn't Amy say she wanted?
Yeah. Mhm. Okay. Well,
Hearing none, we will take a vote. But we didn't have anybody volunteer last year, and I did as president of the board, so, I mean, if that's the case, so be it. But if someone wants to volunteer, please speak up.
Okay. Certification of millage levies. Each May, the board is required to certify the millage levies to be assessed for the following year. Again, there's an action item later on the agenda to do this, but I wanted to point out that though the community recently passed a millage for the purchase of school buses, the listed debt retirement millage is 3.04, which is down from 3.14 this current year as a result of the refinancing of previous district bonds that we've discussed at previous meetings.
Steve, what was the total number of dollars that was saved in refinancing the bonds?
Oh, Tina, we went over 1 million or 2 million, because it was in a slide, but about $1.5 million saved over the life of those bonds.
Over the life of the bonds.
For the community,
Okay.
correct.
Okay. All right, we move on to item 9, board action agenda items. First item on the agenda is per administration recommendation, the Board of Education approves the revisions of Board of Education Policy 551701 as presented and discussed. Motion needed.
So moved.
Mrs.
Support.
Frank? Mrs. Bebout? Comments, questions? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Item B, we are tabling.
Correct.
That is correct. Do we need to take any motion to table that?
Might as well move to table.
I'll make a motion to postpone it until the next regular school board
Scheduled meeting?
meeting.
Okay. All right.
Support.
Support.
Support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So that'll come to us in June.
Correct.
Okay. Item C, recommended action. Per administration recommendation, the Board of Education approve the RISA budget resolution, including that you have reviewed and support the SCC RESA budget for 2015-16.
Yeah, that's the resolution.
East China School District Budget Resolution, a regular meeting of the Board of Education of the East China School District was held on Monday, May 18th, 2015 at 7 p.m. Members present, all except Mrs. Amy Murphy, whereas the board received the St. Clair County RISA budget on or before May 1st, 2015, and whereas in accordance with Section 380.64 of the revised school code, the board must now adopt a resolution expressing its support or disapproval of the proposed RISA budget and must submit to the RISA board any specific objections and/or proposed changes the board may have to the budget prior to June 1st, 2015. Therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Education has received and reviewed the proposed intermediate school district budget in accordance with Section 624 of the revised school code as amended, and the adoption of this resolution expresses its support or disapproval of the proposed intermediate school district budget. The Secretary of the Board is hereby directed to submit a copy of this resolution to the Secretary of the RISA Board of Education along with any specific objections or proposed changes to the budget no later than June 1st.
I'll make that motion with two exceptions, and that's add a third whereas, and that's whereas I'll hand these down. Whereas the 2015/16 St. Clair County RISA budget reflects an elimination of administrative pay cuts. That's the one addition. And then the last addition would be under number 3 on the second page. The Board of Education highly suggests that the St. Clair County RISA Board reconsider the elimination of administrative pay cuts as a showing of good faith to the community. And then under the part where, hold on.
Wasn't there a comment section that you said was available for that purpose?
Correct.
The
Yes.
resolution says that our secretary
Our
will give
secretary
to
will
them
take-
their secretary
Right.
with comments.
Yes,
Correct.
Correct.
I personally don't think we should add it to the resolution, but just make that the comment.
That, I agree with that.
Okay. But the motion would be to disapprove of the proposed RISA budget.
The motion was,
That's my motion.
well, the motion was read to and supported to approve the RISA budget. If you do not want to approve the RISA budget, then you vote
You
no.
don't vote
No,
yes.
that's not
That's right.
true.
Yes.
That's-
Yes, it is.
but
That's the-
That's, no, because in order to pass a resolution, it has to pass. So if you vote no, it doesn't pass, there's no resolution.
A vote no is saying that we do not approve the RISA budget.
No.
That's what we did last year.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, but that wasn't the correct way to do it, though.
Well, the resolution that you have specifically states approval or disapproval. So I'm going to suggest that you do a roll call vote in which you indicate not yea or nay, but approve or disapprove. That way, when we fill in that blank on the resolution, it says specifically that the board voted to approve or disapprove the resolution.
Well, no, theoretically, you would have to pass the resolution. You'd have to pass it. You can't pass a resolution by saying approve or disapprove.
It does express specifically in the resolution. It says the Board of Education has received and reviewed the proposed intermediate school district budget in accordance with Section Act 624 of the revised school code as amended, and the adoption of this resolution expresses support or disapproval of the proposed intermediate school district budget. So if we do a roll call vote, and that's listed on here as a roll call vote, yea or nay? On an individual?
But you would need to pass the resolution. That's not passing the resolution, that's just saying your opinion. on
That's
the
what they're asking
resolution.
for.
all it is.
That's all it is our opinion, whether we want to approve or disapprove their budget.
Right.
Period.
But you need a motion to either approve or disapprove. You can't pass a resolution.
We have a resolution, we have a motion to approve the budget. If everybody votes nay,
Then the
that's
resolution
disapproving.
dies.
No.
Yes.
No, the
That's-
resolution doesn't die. The resolution states that you disapproved the budget.
the budget.
Correct.
No, that's,
Okay.
Yes.
no, that means there's no resolution.
This came from us?
That came from
RISA.
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 So again, it might be, if RISA's doing it, if RISA's not following procedure,
Well, yeah,
then
but
perhaps,
no.
this
See, look
is
at
a RISA document.
Correct. And what they did is they put in there, what you do, you fill in this part where it says expresses its blank, which would be support or disapproval, you add that in.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to
Yeah,
vote on
you
it
do
by a
that-
roll call
you
vote.
You do that in the motion, though. You don't do that by saying approve or disapprove.
Do you have
According
this?
to,
Yes,
according to,
No, that's not,
this is the resolution from RISA.
okay.
right.
Yep.
So
Yes,
would
it is.
would it help?
And it's a resolution.
Would it help to do a roll call vote to
Is it
approve or
A,
disapprove?
I,
Once
or
you've
nay?
decided which one of those you'd use, then you can approve the resolution that includes the word approve or disapprove.
That's fine.
That would make sense.
Mrs. Frank, yea or nay?
I'm sorry, I missed that last.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Take a roll call.
I apologize.
We're going to take a roll call vote.
I understand that, but I'm not sure exactly on how we're wording it at this
I think
point.
rather than yea or nay, maybe approve or disapprove.
I disapprove of the RISA budget.
Mrs. Beba.
Nay.
Mr. Kennigbauer.
Nay.
Mr. Richley.
No.
Mr. Distorat.
I'm going to vote with my colleagues and disapprove, but I do want to just make a comment. The only trouble that I have two things give me trouble. One is that as a board member, I want to respect their board and let them make their decisions, but Jeannie makes a really good point, and so I want to support that. The other thing, as a person who works in public education, I hope that there's a time when raises are a possibility and happen, and it's just not, but that's
Sure.
that's maybe my own personal. It's hard to see it continue to go that way, but I support. I want to be with the board.
And I vote nay. Unanimous vote. No.
So now the suggestion was that you take a voice vote to approve the resolution disapproving the budget.
Per recommendation, the Board of Education approve the decision of this board to disapprove the RISA budget resolution indicating we have reviewed SCCRES's budget for 2015-16.
I'll make the motion to disapprove of the RISA budget.
Support?
Support.
Support. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. So moved. Item D, recommended action. Per administration and recommendation, the Board of Education approves the resolution electing a board member to vote in the upcoming RISA board election. Resolution of the East China School District Board of Education, whereas the biennial election of the Board of the St. Clair County Regional Education Services Agency will be held on Monday, June 1st, 2015, at a meeting of representative from constituent school boards. Whereas Section 614.2 of the revised school code requires a constituent school board to designate its representative and identify the intermediate school district candidate the board supports for each position to be filled on the board by a resolution adopted no earlier than 21 days prior to the date of the election. And whereas Section 614.2 prescribes the method for passage of a resolution, including the requirement of the considering the resolution at not less than one public meeting before adopting the resolution. And whereas the board previously considered the resolution at an open meeting conducted in a manner prescribed under the Open Meetings Act of April 27th, 2015. Now therefore be it resolved that the board designates as its representative to serve the 2015 electoral body responsible for electing members of the St. Clair County Regional Educational Service Agency Board and Education and we appoint blank as alternate representative in the event the designated representative is unable to attend. The board supports candidate Janet L. Clayton for a position in the St. Clair County RISA Educational Service Agency Board of Education for a term of 6 years. The board directs its representative to vote for candidate Janet L. Clayton at least on the first ballot taken on June 1st election. The board authorizes and directs its secretary to file this resolution with the Secretary of the St. Clair County Regional Education Board of Education.
My only question is, can we vote on the person that we're sending separately from the candidate itself?
No, you may not.
There's only one candidate.
Right.
And we are required by law to direct an elector from this board to vote for a lawfully acknowledged candidate. and there is only one lawfully acknowledged candidate.
Correct.
So we can't vote and change the candidate, so there's only one vote. We have-
Correct. But I'm just asking if we can vote on that separately. If not, then.
No, not
Okay.
allowed.
Well, at
If
this
it-
time then, I will just say whoever when I vote no, it's not against the person that we're sending, it's against the person that's being elected. So I just want to make that clear.
All right, with one, I mean, if there were multiple people on that were running that we had the opportunity to vote on, then you would
Right.
have a separate vote.
Right.
But for the fact that there was only one designated,
Well, there's two choices. You vote on who you send and who you, but I understand. I'll leave it at that, so.
June 1st at
5:30.
5:30. Any volunteers? Sorry. I will do it.
Thank you, Jim.
Any designee?
you.
Second?
You do have to
I
name
do
an
have to name an
alternate.
alternate.
I'll
Mr. Koenigbauer, okay? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
I'm sorry, do we have a motion? We got to have
I did.
did someone?
So moved.
Okay.
Support.
Okay, sorry.
Did we vote?
Pardon?
Did we vote?
We didn't vote. I'm sorry, we co-opted you a little bit there.
Yeah, all those-
Kelly did not hear a motion second, now she did, so.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
So carried. Recommended action, item E, per administration recommendation, the Board of Education approves a resolution certifying 2015 millage levies. Certification of 2015 tax rate. Be it resolved that the following be the tax rates for the 2014 tax rolls for the East China School District in St. Clair County for the operation of the schools and debt service. Operations, 18.00 non-homestead. Sinking fund, .40. Debt retirement, 3.40.
3.04.
3.04, pardon me.
That's okay.
Stand corrected, thank you. Motion needed.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Koenigbauer.
Support.
Support. Mrs. Biebuck. Comments or questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So carried. Next item on our agenda, recommended action that the Board of Education goes into closed session pursuant to Section 8C of the Open Meetings Act, Act 267 of 1976. That being for the board discussion connected with negotiations of a collective bargaining agreement. I'll take a roll call vote. Mrs. Frank?
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
In regard to why we're going into closed session, is this, I assume it has to do with the tentative agreement that we're going to be voting on?
Correct, just to allow you to ask any questions that you may want to do. I mean, you can ask in closed session some questions. Obviously, when we come back, there will be a motion and there'll be a discussion. We can also have discussion in open session, but historically, there's been the opportunity, because it is a collectively bargained agreement, for the board to ask questions in closed session before voting.
Is there any reason why we can't do that out here, or legally or not?
No, I mean, you don't have to go into closed session if you don't want to. That's why it's on the agenda.
Okay.
All right, we'll take a majority vote. Mrs. Frank?
Aye.
Mrs. Biebuck?
Aye.
Mr. Koenigbauer?
Aye.
I vote aye. Mr. Richley?
No.
Mr. Distelrath?
Aye.
We will go into closed session. At the return of the session is the item that we are going into closed session for collective bargaining unit. Item 12 is items for next board meeting. Thank you. Administrations for next board meeting. Thank you. Administration recommendation, the Board of Education ratifies a tentative agreement 2015-16 between the Board of Education of the East China School District and the East China Service Employees International Union 517A. Motion needed.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Koenigbauer.
Support.
Support by Mrs. Biebuck. Comments or questions?
I just have one real quick comment, and that's that I'm going to vote in favor of this tonight, but I do want to say that I have reservations with the wording, keeping in there about privatizing and getting, like with attrition. So I still have reservations about that, and in the future I will continue to fight against that, but tonight I'm going to vote with this language, so thank you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So carried. Item number 12, items for the next regular board meeting, budget hearing, budget approval, and superintendent evaluation and contract. With that, we stand adjourned.